I actually really enjoyed that panel discussion, and it does lead into quite a lot what I'm talking about today. So there will be a slight part at the very end, but I'm not focusing on tools or processes or anything like that. What I want to be talking about today is how the organisation sees testing and why they see it that way, and what we can do within ourselves and within our organisation to improve upon that. So to start off, my name is Brenden Heinitz. I work for 29 Forward. 29 Forward is an international company founded in Germany, and then I came over to Australia with 29 Forward here a few years ago. So we got Germany, Poland, France, we got South Africa, and starting over in America as well. I've got a local partnership with Parasoft. It's the one with the racing car over there. Give it a go if you can. And we've also got a number of international partnerships. Myself, as I was just saying, I got quite a bit of international experience. So I'd lived over in Germany for 15 years. Majority of my experience has been over in Germany, but I was very, very fortunate to be able to do a lot of work a lot of European countries, and also over in America and China, and obviously here in Australia. So I've done test strategies, I've created KPIs, I've done training for large audiences and also individual mentoring. So that's my background. So like I said, what we're going to be talking about is testing from an enterprise perspective. So first of all, why does an organisation, or why does your organisation test? Why they don't test, or don't test as much as we would like. What's test maturity? So I think everyone has an idea, but I'm going to go into a bit more detail. Why is it beneficial to increase your maturity? And how can you increase your maturity? So we'll start from the basics. Why does your organisation test? Why do we test at all? So taken straight out of ISTQB, software testing is a way to assess the quality of the software and to reduce the risk of failure in operation. So we are not finding all the bugs. We are not solving any individual item. We are assessing what the quality is so that the company, the organisation, can make a decision whether it's now at the quality level that they accept and want to go live with or not. So obviously from our perspective, we always want perfect quality, but from an organisational perspective, they want to know at what quality level, or they want to know the quality level so they can make a decision for themselves. It is a juxtaposition. It is, if you think about it, quite a logical step, but being stuck in the quality management and the testing world, we do get blinded to that. So why do we test? Testing is expensive. That's what the company sees. Everything we do, the longer it takes, the more people we employ. Any delays in the quality of the software is additional testing costs that they have. So software testing is expensive. But the flip side of software failure in operations is also expensive. Obvious. So what the company is looking to do, the organisation is looking to do, is to find that point where additional cost of testing, where the benefit or the reduction in the cost outweighs the cost of additional testing. So we are trying to find that one point, or the organisation is trying to find that one point. So did some research. Parasoft helped me find that as well, but there was some research done a couple of years ago. In America, costing of testing is about $6.7 billion industry. That's a massive industry that we have here. But on the flip side, what's the cost of not testing or failure? It's $2.4 trillion plus the technical debt of 1.5, so it's nearly $4 trillion of not testing. So there's still a lot more testing that could be done to reduce that amount. The question is, how much is it? How do we determine that? And how do we get to that position? So some of the costs of not testing are your direct fines. So these are the big headline news. There's a lot of smaller ones as well, but Amazon had a $877 million fine, Instagram 403. Meta or WhatsApp had $532 million fines. They're the big ones. There's heaps more. We've all heard about it in the news. All of the leakage of data or not following the EU rules or whatever it might be, it results in a direct fine. So that is the first cost of not testing. Admittedly, potentially they've made a decision to do that on purpose, but that's a bit too political for this speech. Reputational damage. So there's a direct cost, but there's also a reputational cost. If you deliver a product too early, or more specifically, not to the quality that you'd like, the cost of that decision can be very expensive from a reputational point of view. You may lose your market share because of that mistake. So one of the interesting ones that I found was Heathrow Airport. They introduced, when they first came up, they had some software error, and basically for the first 1 or 2 days, they had lost 42,000 bags, 500 cancelled flights, and a direct cost associated of £16 million. So that was a massive hit to the beginning, to the opening of Heathrow. It left a mark on their reputation for many years. Luckily, they got a bit of a monopoly, so they're still a bit in there. But there are other companies that haven't been so lucky. So Knights Capital was one of them. They implemented some software training. So it was a stock trading company. They'd introduced some new software to get the best market edge, but there was some mistake, and they ended up trading and making $7 billion worth of trades, which ended up in a $440 million loss, and this was over a matter of minutes. So they quickly stopped it, got rid of it, but they had lost so much, the reputation was damaged irreparably, and eventually they went effectively bankrupt, but they were acquired by a competitor and merged all the assets together. So that software mistake had cost the company completely. MaxGov lost $1.5 million, and this led directly to bankruptcy as opposed to being bought out. So there's a lot of cost in that, and one bad decision can make or break a company. There's some direct costs, contractual fines. So if you're a software provider and you don't deliver certain aspects, it can cost you directly contractual fines. But then there's also, I remember it's probably 20 years back when web, like online flight booking was there, they had companies set up only looking for the, let's say, manually entering of incorrect data. So you'd have flights from Australia to Los Angeles that were going for $100 instead of $1,000. Like they missed a digit, and people were buying up those tickets and they had to honour it. So even that is something that we need to consider. So why doesn't your organisation test? We know what we need to do, we know the expense of it, and this is what I was referring to before. Before we start testing, I'm not sure how far I can go away from the microphone, but before we start testing, the cost is extremely high. We don't know what any of the errors are. The errors will be delivered into production. And so the very first few tests, unit tests, exploratory tests, whatever it might be, you will start to see a very high drop-off of the defects or the what will effectively be costs in production very quickly. At some point on the very far end, you've tested close to everything. You can never test everything, but you've tested close to everything, and so you can pump more and more testers and automation and everything into it, but the actual benefit that you give in the organisation becomes very, very low compared to what they're doing. So what they're looking for, what an organisation is looking for, is where is that crossover point? That's what the organisation is looking for. They want to pay as little money as they can to reduce the cost as much as they can. That's it. It's simple, everyone knows that, but the idea is we don't really think about that. We think about this, they think about this, we have to communicate it so they think about this. So what are some of the reasons that aren't in your control? And then I'll talk about some that are in your control. So it's a balance. The first thing is total project budget. There is very little, like obviously we have an impact or an influence into the total budget and all the things on the left-hand side, but realistically, we don't have any control about that. budgets come down, we have to work within it, and that's the cost part of the triangle. Budget allocation is that next part. The project manager, the program manager has decided this is how much testing costs, and sometimes we have to fall into it. Obviously, we need to talk to them and convince them why the cost is required, the benefit we get out of that, but to a large degree, that budget allocation is not there. It gets even worse when we talk about the scope. So what often happens, very, very common, is new change requests will come in. And so they think, okay, the cost of the additional costs should be associated to the development of this new change. And where are we going to take it? Oh, we haven't done testing yet. They can do it quicker and they can do it for less money. So the scope and the budget allocation falls in there. Project deadline. Who's had a project deadline that doesn't move? Happens to everyone. That is a result. And the biggest problem for us is we're at the very end of that path. And so any time that is lost at the beginning of the project comes from our budget, from our time budget. And then the last one is the risk appetite. So companies can choose, organisations can choose what their risk appetite is. If it's a very highly regulated market, then obviously their risk appetite will be much lower. So if you're in banking, finance, insurance, they will have a much lower risk appetite, and you will be able to encourage out of them a bit more focus on testing. If you go outside of those highly regulated companies or organisations or industries, then the risk appetite tends to become much higher. They are much more willing to accept a lower quality product if it means they can get in there first. So it is a balance, it is an organisational decision. And so sort of going back to what was said before, is you need to, there is no one best practice, there is no one way of doing it. Every company, every organisation has their own inputs and decision making that they have, and it's trying to understand that and work within that. So what can we do? We can make sure that the quality that we deliver for the time, the budget and everything is as good as possible. That's something that is in our control. If we introduce the best practices, if we have specific processes and we follow the strategy that we've set out, that will lead to a higher quality product at the end, and it will also improve how we are viewed by the organisation. Testing consistency is also quite important. If one project went really well, 0 defects in production, everything's great, but the next one, it's a total failure, we're still not going to get there. The effort estimation, awesome. I'll come a little bit to that a little bit later. And probably the most important part, PowerPoint presentations, telling them what the problem is, communication. Communication is the key that we need to take. We need to communicate how these things affect the quality, what the benefit is. We don't want to be a cost centre. We want to be the opposite of a cost centre. We want to be providing benefit, and we need to explain what that benefit is and track what that benefit is. There's one last one, a little bonus. One of the reasons, or organisations do look at the present value of money versus the future value of money. So there will be organisations, usually those that are less, more risk adverse, that are happy to pay less now with the potential of paying more later, because they want to be first. They want to, the money that they have now can be invested somewhere else and provide more benefit than the future cost of that money. I'm sorry, this side, I seem to be looking this way a lot more. I'll try to turn my head. So going into what was on the right-hand side, sort of explaining it, the impacts of it, how it affects us, is if you have poor test quality, so we've got a lot of inexperience in our company, we're going to get less total coverage. We're not going to find as many defects as a more experienced tester or a more experienced organisation would be able to find. And so the amount of defects that are still found in production are going to stay much higher, being much higher. It's not what anybody wants. And so higher test cost to savings. So if we got more defects, it's costing more because we don't know what we're doing. It's just a recipe for disaster. And so poor quality, testing is stopped earlier, costs is higher, comparatively speaking, and testing is seen very unfavourable. And if you start from this position and you try and tell somebody I need some more money, and they see everything you're doing is just costing me money and you're not doing what you're telling me, of course an organisation doesn't want to invest in testing. So let's say we've improved the experience. We've got some good testers in there. We've hired some experts with 20 years experience, but we don't yet have processes. So once again, they work on the one project, they get really good results. They work on the next project, or somebody else works on the next project, and we get terrible results. And so the consistency is out of whack because we're not following a set process. There is no set rules that we follow to be able to consistently get the same level of quality in each project. Once again, introduces another problem. That crossover point becomes quite unpredictable. They don't know while they're planning whether this is one of the ones that's going to go really well or one of the ones that's going to go really poorly. And so what ends up happening is you might end up over-investing in the project that would have done really well with less money, and you might under-invest in the project that would have needed that extra money to achieve the same level of quality. And so once again, it's unfavourable. It's not seen in a positive light by the organisation, which is once again hard to get the investment behind it. So we want to improve our quality. We want to improve our consistency. And that sort of leads into good effort estimation. I'll come to a point later that, which I'm quite impressed, but if we can tell the customer what we can deliver, how much it's going to cost, and that's repeatable every single time, it's much more plannable. They know exactly what the cost is, they know exactly what the benefit is, and that's when it starts to become seen as a favourable. So we want to get to that position, and from that position, from that strength, we can continue to invest, we can continue to grow, we continue to understand what the next steps are. So what is test maturity? Test maturity is a classification of testing processes implemented within a company, a department or a project, and the adherence to those projects throughout the company, department or project, as well as the adherence to those processes through time. So there's three parts, that's why I've separated as it is. The first one is test maturity can be viewed as an entirety of the entire organisation. It can be viewed in a specific department or part of a department. It can be viewed in a project. So you can look at test maturity in different levels. You may have one department that is quite mature, but the other department is quite far behind. You don't need to lump them all together. You can take a individualised view of that and understand what it's like. The second one is it's not a snapshot in time. You need to follow it. So it's good that you have the processes all written down, but if nobody's actually following it, you have not achieved that level of maturity that the processes reflect. And it's not only following it, but following it through time. So if you do that, or if the company does that for 3 months and then go back to the old ways, you haven't reached that level of maturity. It's when it's built in, when it stays at that level, when you're following those processes throughout time, that's when you know you've actually received or reached that level of maturity. So what is a test maturity model? Test maturity model is a framework to determine the maturity of the software testing process. Why is there 5 levels? This is a little statement I heard from the founder of it, was there's 5 levels because the higher-ups, the CEOs, the COOs, they can count to 5. So there is a level of seriousness in there. In these 5 levels, there's so many additional things you can do. There is so many ways that we can improve our testing. If you went to a list to your CEO, it's like, we just have to do these 200 things and then we're going to be fine, they're going to laugh you out. But if you say, I'm here and we want to get here, they say, okay, so I'm just under level 2, I want to complete level 2 and start working on level 3. Fine, great. We've got a goal, something to go towards, and they can measure it as well. If you've got 200 things you're trying to implement and you're trying to measure them all separately, it's very hard for them to know whether they've reached it or not. If you've got 5 levels, we're on level 2, we want to go to level 3, we're on level 3, we want to make it level 5, there's a goalpost. It's only 1 level, it's only 2 levels. It's easy, much easier to sell it to whoever the decision maker is. And so what's a test maturity model integration, TMMi? The utilization of TMMi is to determine the current test process maturity and to provide targets or goals for improving the software processes. So it's taking that model and seeing what are the next steps that we're going to be taking. So there's 5 levels of test maturity. Level 1, initial, managed, defined, measured, and optimization. So we'll start off with, I'm going to get to it again. I wanted to give you the overview, we'll go through it, and there'll be a screen at the end. So the initial level, this is basically every single organisation has this. There is some testing done in some form or another. It could be someone's written a code and they've looked at it. That's the level of testing. It's really bad, like it can be the absolute minimum, but pretty much everyone starts off at that level. So there is no level 0 under TMMi. So an organisation test. The very surprising thing, I don't think it would apply to many here, but overall in the market, 74% of organisations are still at level 1. They have not reached level 2. Obviously, if you're here now, you're in an organisation that allows you to go to a conference, that pays for you to go to a conference. So I would guess they're not quite at level 1, they're probably a little bit further up. So for us, it is a little bit surprising, but if you look at the larger area, if you're not in one of those industries that have a very strong regulation, there's a lot of organisations out there that are still very, very low. The second level, it's called managed level, and that's the project-oriented maturity. So that's the introduction of, I probably should put my glasses on so I can read better. That's the introduction of having a test policy, having a test concept and following it, planning what the tests are going to be. How are we going to do? Are we going to do risk-based testing? Are we going to have automation or whatever it might be? Writing tests and following them tests. A lot of companies, that's probably why many of them are still in level 1, is they don't actually write what they're going to test. They get it, they start testing, they do intuitive tests, and they don't actually know what they're doing, and they can't measure how good it's gone, how much they've covered, and so on and so forth. And probably the other one that may hold a lot of companies back is the test environment. Having a separate test environment that you can test in is not a given. In a lot of industries and a lot of organisations, it's not a given. Whether it could also be just a portion. So we did not have the ability to test against, this was a performance test, but test against the Medicare. So that would be an example where that wasn't available, the test environment wasn't available. So the third level is defined, and this is building a test organisation. So on an individual project, we already have level 2, we already have the test processes, we know what we're doing, but this is around building the test organisation. It is knowing the difference between a manual tester, a test engineer, a test lead, a test manager. It's knowing what those are, knowing what that entails, being able to write an ad and actually look for that person in the market. It's also knowing what the progressions are. What, if I start as a manual tester, what are the steps to become a lead test automator? What are the steps to become a test manager? What are the steps to do a senior tester, senior manual tester? So knowing those progressions and then also supporting them, sending them to conferences, sending them to training, having those discussions about best practices within your organisation, once a month, once every 3 months, whatever it might be. It also does introduce, one of the important parts is your peer reviews, so the static testing. It's not just testing after the fact, but making sure we're involved earlier in the process, and also potentially introducing the non-functional tests. There are always exceptions, everything needs to be tailored, so yes. Measured. So this is reviewing the test processes. So everything we've done in particular level 2 is looking at the quality of the product that we're delivering. This is now looking at the processes that we are using to determine the good quality or deliver the good, better quality. And then finally is optimization. So this is self-improvement. So take a photo. Anyone can take a photo. It's self-improvement. So basically, level 4, you've already achieved everything fundamentally that there is on the market right now that we can do. But it's setting up those processes, setting up those metrics, it's setting up those KPIs and making incremental improvements, changes to continuously improve, to take advantage of ChatGPT or any other AI language models that might not be in the documentation from 10 years ago that everything else is based on. So why do we want to increase test maturity? There's quite a number of reasons. Once again, from a survey, 88% that have been focusing on the test maturity have received much better measurable product quality improvements. Test efficiency has gone up, test predictability has gone up, business alignment has gone up. One of the ones that was referred to here, sorry, I forgot the name, but the people, the acceptance within the company, the feeling within the company, the belonging and the retention of people has gone up. On the individual level, I really need to get my glasses for this one, we have test predictability. So the survey looked at the people that were actually achieved level 2, and they said the test predictability has gone up, more recognition. So once again, like the whole speech presentation has been about, is actually getting acceptance of testing within the organisation, and also just more accuracy within the test predictability. When we go up to the next one, defect leakage has reduced down to 5%, so from 10 to 5% into production, so we are finding more defects. We've got a higher coverage. Test execution has gone down, so that's also great for the organisation. If you can reach level 3 and cut your testing in half, your organisation is going to love you. The one that I like, project acquisition through TMMi, like with any certification, it is something that shows a level within the industry that you can refer to that says, look, we are focused on our quality, the product that we deliver, so this would be for the suppliers, the product that we deliver, we stand behind, we have the quality behind that, and so we want to deliver it. Time to market, so speeding up everything, reduced external testers, high level of customer satisfaction. And I believe towards the end here, test estimation, so level 5, test estimation, 95% accurate. 95% accurate. You ask any project manager if any department can give you an estimation that it's 95% accurate. No department ever can do that. But the people that have received, reached level 5 certificate are able to give an accurate estimation. So that's my favourite one of all of them, but obviously the defect detection rate has gone near perfect, efficiency, everything else. So there's a lot of reasons to increase your maturity. One of the things is you don't want to be increasing your maturity to increase your maturity. You need to know what you want to improve or why we want to do that, and looking at test maturity and implementing test maturity is a method to get there. So that's what we're looking to do. How's time? Going well. So how can we implement test maturity? First, easiest step, read up about it. Listen to a speech like now. CMM and CMMi is where TMMi is based on. CMM is much more development focused, and TMMi took a lot of that. It works together with CMMi to create a testing focus, and then obviously ISTQB. There is so many different options and training and information through ISTQB that is just a part of testing. You've done a bit of your research, you can start self-identify. So you can go in there, look at what the different stages are, different maturity levels are, go within your company and just make a self-assessment. Talk to your head of testing, get them to do it throughout the organisation, find out roughly where they are, and according to the book what do we need to be doing. So this is obviously an option that you can have. Or you can also go to external support and assessments. So that's what we do. And then also Parasoft, so our partner, you can also get some technology to help assist that section. So for myself, we got internal, informal and formal assessments. So the informal assessments are probably the first step that we recommend. It's basically going into the organisation, understanding where you are, and from that we can start giving you what the next steps could be. Formal assessment is more for, do I get the certificate for it? Can I use that? Can I put it on my website? Can I speak to my customers about it? It's great. It also provides, let's say, a deadline and a reason to really get behind it. If you're just going to stick with informal, there's less buy-in, so you want to have the formal assessment, but generally speaking, you'd start with the informal assessment, find out where you are, find out what you need to improve, work on it for 3, 6, 12 months until you've reached that point, then do the formal assessment, and then set the goal for the next one. We support you getting there, so I've said it to a number of people just in chats here. It's good that you know what the tools are, you know what the next steps are, you know what the processes are, but to follow that and to have those people in the organisation that are those champions, you really need that. Otherwise, it's just a piece of paper and everyone will ignore it, go back. So we can also have that motivation, that those people in there that really champion that change and help you achieve it and maintain it. Best practices, advice, so just had an hour session on that. And also just the continuous self-improvement. We are always there. We can always give you feedback from other companies, from what we're learning, what we're hearing in all these conferences, just bringing that all together. Supporting technology, so I've got a few more minutes. Obviously, Dominic over in the booth will give you way more information than I ever could, but there's a short summary. So Parasoft's mission was to provide automated testing solutions and expertise that empower organisations to expedite delivery of safe and reliable software. So that's their mission. That's why we chose to go with them. So there's a number of providers here that have all gone through the different tools that they have. There are a lot of different companies, different tools that do the same thing. Parasoft, I just believe, is one of the best. And they don't have a tool, they have a set of tools, and the set of tools work together. So there's a couple of things that we sort of talked about earlier. Is environment management, didn't mention it, but test data management, reporting and analytics, smart test creation, execution, and non-functional tests. And Parasoft, they have more, but for this particular presentation, they have Parasoft Virtualize for the first two, continuous quality platform, SOA test and Selenic, and then the load test. So they have it. I will go a few minutes, but like I said before, speak to Dom. If any of these pique your interest, he will be able to give you the information. This is just an idea around that. So Parasoft Virtualize is, like I was saying earlier, with Medicare. If you have an application environment, a dependency that we might not have access to, or we might not have constant access to when we need it, it might be expensive to utilize it, then you can use this. So what will end up happening is you'll define the measurements, the cutoff points that you want to use, you'll run the test, it'll start to learn, it'll push the data through, and it will create a virtualized environment, virtualized results of there. And we put those virtualized results into the Parasoft virtualized server. And so what happens is we can start using the virtualized server instead of, once it clicks onto it, instead of actually reaching out to Medicare directly. So we know what the results, the outputs and the inputs should be. We just simulate that exactly there, and it's all used together. I'll wait for one photo, perfect. So we're consuming it, we're using it, and it goes right into that. And so we can, in that capture, you can capture the information and you can reuse that information multiple times. You can capture the information, you can mask it, so it has tools, AI and machine learning, to be able to simplify that as easy as possible. And then you can create as many different environments you have, you can reload the same environment each time you run the test, so you're not bloating the test environment with data that may affect the test results. You have a point that you can continue with each time. And you can create subsets of the data. Make it lighter, make it more complicated. You can add specific data in there that you haven't captured previous. And that all leads in together. So you run that same virtualized system into each of your testing sections, scenarios. Obviously, like any good tool, there's a lot of dashboards and KPIs that you have. You can drill down really far. And it lists all of them. So I still don't believe in this slide that's all of the tools that they have, but it is a selection of what they have. And they all feed into different dashboards. They work together with each other. The dashboards work with each other. And so you can create different dashboards for the different stakeholders that you'd like to present to at different levels. Test anything from development testing, test coverage, test progress, everything. The next sort of major point that I really enjoyed when I was learning about Parasoft is the use of AI and machine learning. They were doing this before ChatGPT came out, just FYI. But they really look into it. How can we streamline the support that the applications give you on all levels? So they really go through all the levels, but the one that I sort of refer to the most is the smart Selenium testing. I think that's the easiest for most people to understand. Everyone's used Selenium before, and I think it was the second speaker today was talking about how it breaks all the time. And so they've got tools, they've got some AI, some machine learning put in there that will identify with different levels of certainty what change needs to be made to find it. So it'll look through the system, it'll find what they believe or what the system believes is the correct thing. And depending on how you configure it, it'll either automatically repair it, it'll run it once, didn't find it, repair it, run it a second time, yes, I found it, exactly what I wanted, do you agree? Or, depending on the level of certainty, it'll say, I think it's this, but I'd rather that someone comes in and just confirm before I run the test again. So they've built it all in there. They do have it in all different levels down to the unit test. Unit test is not my speciality. That's why it sort of goes over my head, but they do have it everywhere. So that's it. Any questions, let me know.